Hello, opponent and judge. Today I will tell you why you will vote for the opposition. I will argue that vegetarianism is not more ethical than meat eating, and I will solve for the harms that my opponent has attributed to meat eating. My opponent believes that factory meat production should end because this is more beneficial for humans and animals on the basis of human health and animal cruelty. Firstly, vegetarianism does not affect all humans positively. In the world we live in today, there is a large hunger problem. According to Peter Uven, professor and researcher at Amherst College, however, there is already enough food in the world to feed the entire population. This means that world hunger exists because people do not have access to this food due to issues of race, sex, and poverty. Uven defines food poverty as, quote, the inability of households to obtain sufficient food to meet the nutritional needs of their members due to inadequate income, poor access to productive resources, inability to benefit from private or public food transfers, or lack of other entitlements to food, end quote. Uven goes on to say that food poverty persists in countries with more than enough food to feed the nation's population. This means that people starve because they can't afford or access food. Here in the US, meat is cheaper and easier to obtain than vegetarian and vegan options. If meat production were to stop, that would make it even more difficult for these already disadvantaged and marginalized groups to obtain food. More people would starve and die, and this means that vegetarianism would in fact be less beneficial for humans than meat eating. Also, ending the meat production industry would be detrimental to the employees of this industry. Factory farm workers already work in very poor conditions and get paid very little. According to writer Mark Hawthorne, factory farm employees make $11.42 per hour, which comes to around $23,000 a year. Many of these employees are foreign immigrants, most of the time undocumented, and thus have a very difficult time finding work. If we were to take these jobs away from them, they would spiral downward to poverty even further. Also, although vegetarianism may help improve the world's health, enforced vegetarianism would also take away humans' freedom of choice. Some individuals simply prefer to eat meat, and they have the means of doing so. Therefore, they should be allowed to exercise their free will, an elementary human right. Also, a new form of meat production, vitro meat production, will solve for the harm of animal cruelty and not take away from free will, all without ending meat production. According to Neil Stevens, research associate at Cardiff University, vitro meat involves growing muscle cells to form tissue which can be consumed as meat, and this can be done in several different ways. Up until now, according to Stevens, meat production has always involved the slaughter of a significant number of animals. With vitro meat, the meat is produced from cells. There are several benefits, including, quote, the environmental benefits of meat production with lower greenhouse gas emissions, land, water, and energy use, the health benefits of meat with no animal disease or antibiotic buildup, the space travel benefits of meat that does not require access to a farm for production, food innovation benefits of meat that could have superior appearance and taste, and lower cost than more traditional sources, and lastly, the animal liberation benefits of meat, which does not involve killing significant numbers of animals, end quote. Although in some forms of vitro meat production some animals need to be killed, including the extraction of embryonic cells and cells from adults, scientists from the University of Amsterdam are developing a non-animal derived alternative based on blue-green algae. Even so, many of the other methods of vitro production are preferable to meat production today. According to Stevens, who interviewed several researchers in the field, embryonic cell production, which involves the destruction of one embryo, can actually result in a cell line that may be cultured indefinitely. This all means that we would need drastically less animals to provide food and cells for us. Thus, cell donors, or the animals used, can be treated very nicely, essentially like domestic animals, according to interviews conducted by Stevens. According to this research still, even PETA supports the production of vitro meat since it does not involve the unfair treatment of animals. Therefore, vitro meat production can solve for animal cruelty issues involved in today's meat production. It is also an economically viable option. To respond directly to my opponent, who cites colon cancer as a major harm, I agree. However, according to your sources, colon cancer is also a very treatable and preventable disease. Therefore, individuals should be monitoring their health in order to avoid this disease. This is also true for diabetes and other illnesses. Lastly, I should be given the victory because my opponent does not sufficiently cite his sources. He rattles off several organizations and a lot of research, but he only provides 2 citations which do not lead to any of his other sources. How am I to fact-check you and form an argument against your sources when I cannot even find these sources? Also, the citations that were provided were not credible. The sources I provide are from researchers and professors who study these issues closely, and I provide all of them. For these reasons, you should not vote for the proposition. Thank you.